Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Open Book Broadcast. I am so pumped that we're in the new year with a new lineup of fabulous guests, industry experts, and published authors to bring to you all kinds of conversations about writing and publishing and all the things in between. And we are keeping it real over here in the Open Book Broadcast because not only do we want you to know everything there is to know about getting your book onto the shelf, we want you to have a good time while you're doing it. Today's guest is the wonderful Evonne Marzouk. Welcome, Evonne.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have this conversation. But before we dive in, I want to let everybody know the official bio of this fabulous person that I am talking to. So let me properly and formally introduce her before we dive into our conversation. Evonne Marzouk is the author of the Jewish spiritual novel, The Prophetess, published by Bancroft Press in 2019. She's the co-editor of the Uplifting People and Planet, 18 Essential Jewish Lessons on the Environment, and most recently, which I can't wait to talk about, developed a new Heroine'S journal, which empowers teen girls and women to grow into all of their gifts. Oh my gosh, I love she grew up in Philadelphia and received her BA in writing with a minor in religious studies from the Johns Hopkins University. Mic drop. Oh my gosh, so fabulous. I love it all.
Thank you.
So, Evonne, why don't we just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself? So, not the writing stuff yet. We're going to spend the rest of the time talking about that. Who is the Evonne at the end of the day when the door is closed and you can put on your sweats?
Wow. Well, who I am. Who I am is I'm a mom. So the end of the day is like after bedtime and after reading Harry Potter to my kid. And the exercise that I'm trying to do at the end of the day. And the truth is like who I am is a person who's like busy from morning to night. And so pajama time is like write a gratitude list and go to bed. So
Okay, well, pajama time. Let's talk about that. Are you like a silky and cool pajama wearer, or are you like give me the warm and fuzzy fleece lined pants and fuzzy socks?
I'm like a cotton sweatpants pajama person.
Awesome. All right. I love it. I love it. As a fellow mom, I totally understand. It's like, at the end of the day, there's really only that many minutes left before it's time to conk out and do it all again.
Yes, exactly.
So, well, let's weave into then the writing side. How did you manage to get a book and now another one edited and a journal done in the midst of this very busy life that you that you lead?
Right. Well, that's really the tension of my life. It's like I always want to write, and I always have things that I wish I was writing, and I'm always trying to squeeze them into other things that I'm committed to doing. And, when I was a teenager, like I really wanted to be a writer. I thought, I'm going to be a writer. That's what I'm going to do. But then I also just really found that I didn't only want to be a writer. Like I had other things I wanted to do. I have a career that's working to protect the environment. And I really, really wanted to be a mom. And as you can see, I'm an observant Jew. That spiritual practice takes a lot of time. It's very fulfilling, but it's definitely very involved. So I'm always like in this pursuit of like, how can I fit writing into those other commitments? Where can I get the hours that I need to do the writing that I'm committed to? And it's always like a dance, and it's always, trying to carve out that time and then protect it.
Yeah. Oh my God, protecting our time. Oh, I'm like, is there such a thing with kids? Is there such a thing as protecting our time? Everybody's like, oh, lay down boundaries. And I'm like, I'm trying so hard.
I'm
It's a
so
difficult
fortunate to
thing.
have a really supportive husband who really, really wants me to be successful at these things. And like sometimes he's just, okay, you go into
Just
your
go.
office,
Just
close the door, nobody's coming, do what you need
nice.
to do. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So when you do have the chance to write and you're not in that constant turmoil and tension of trying to find the time, what's your favorite part? Like, what do you love the most about the writing process?
I like, so first of all, I'm like an obsessive editor, and I'm actually more of an editor by training than I am a
Mm,
writer in some ways. Like a lot of my career has been editing. And so like one of the challenges that I have is that like sometimes I spend a lot of time editing and not enough time writing. And so the easiest thing for me to do is kind of pull together pieces that already exist and turn them into something.
mm.
But the most fun part is the part where I'm inventing something new and where I get to kind of go into that quiet place and find, you know, the story that needs to be told or the piece of wisdom that's coming that that I can bring forward that didn't already exist. And that's really fulfilling for me. And that is like often associated with listening to music.
Okay.
And for me, my favorite music is like the what on Spotify is called like cinematic chill out. Like the kind of music that's like the quiet music that they play in the back of really great movies.
Yeah.
Like, but just the instrumental part. And
Yep.
it's like it's a story all into itself without any words. And that's like the best way for me to get into like a, you know, a zone.
I'm gonna have to check that out on Spotify because I'm definitely like, if I'm gonna write or get in the zone, it has to be instrumental. If it has words and I know the words, I just want to jam out and sing along. And then I'm not
Exactly.
doing anything other than just being a goofball.
Right.
Like, so I'm with you. And actually, for one of my programs, the writing bar, I have Spotify playlists, and some of the songs in the playlists are actually songs from Harry Potter. The cinematic.
Really, really good
Yeah,
music.
it's good music.
Yeah.
And it's like full of such like fervor and like intensity, and then there's other like softer sides. So I'm gonna go check out the cinema, what did you call it? Cinematic chill out?
Cinematic chill out. It's
Chill
like the
out.
kind, you
Okay.
know, at the end of a movie when they're playing really pretty music with the credits, and you're like, I want to hear this music, but this is silly. This is just credits. Everything, it's over.
I love it.
It's
I
that
love it.
music. I'm the
Oh
kind
my
of
gosh.
dork that would just listen to that music for hours while writing.
Love it. So everybody, that's one of your tips. We didn't know we were going to go there, but one of your tips is to go listen to cinematic chill out while you're writing. Okay, so something that you touched on was that you love to create the new thing. And so it sounds like some of that is like the new message, but I'm guessing that the creating the new thing might also be characters or plot points or worlds that the characters exist in. Is that true?
Yes, and like and stories just dreaming into like what is going to happen next in a story. So
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about then specifically your path to the prophetess. Now, this was a 20-year book in the making.
yeah.
So what is that about? Is that tension thing again?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
okay.
both of the things that I was just talking about. The first thing, the first part of it is the fact that I don't have any time. And so like takes a long time to kind of, you know, fit in a whole book. But a really big part of it was this horrible tendency that I had to edit before I was really finished writing.
Yeah.
And I had a writing coach who actually really helped me figure out that I was doing that. Like I kind of knew, and she was like, "You don't even have a finished book yet. What are you editing for?" I was like, "But I wrote 50 pages or 100 pages, and like, but now I've changed my mind about something, and so everything there is wrong." She was
Yeah.
like, "That's okay. You have to, because that's just keeps happening when you're writing a book until you get to the end, and
Yeah.
then you rewrite the whole thing."
Yeah.
So that was a big aha moment for me to force myself to stop editing and just write the whole thing really badly the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think she and I would get along because I often tell my writers that, like my clients that, like they go back, and I was guilty of this for a really long time myself, like go back and read the paragraph before, and then they're finessing the paragraph before, and I'm like, what happens if you get to the seventh paragraph and you end up with a new premise, and now the first paragraph that you just spent a half an hour perfecting, you have to cut.
It's so sad.
I know. It's like the biggest mental maze. It's like ever, to try to keep yourself moving forward when you know that the thing that you already said needs to be workshopped or critiqued or changed or whatever. So it sounds like then a part of the path to this particular book was eventually getting some extra support
Yes.
around, getting it finished. So I mean, tell us a little bit about what that support looked like. So your coach helped kind of not only point out maybe some of your foibles, but was she really about the accountability? Was she expecting to see certain chapters? Did she help with character development? Like, what was her role for you?
It was a lot of accountability, a lot of me making promises and sending things to her, and on a particular timeline, you know, I promised to her a certain number of hours a week, and then I would work that number of hours and share with her what I had. Another thing, so and I just would like worked through with her like all the different barriers that were like getting in my way, my own sense of insecurity, the parts of the book that I was avoiding writing over and over again, that I would write all these other parts, but there was like a chunk that I was like, I don't know what happens in that part yet, so I'll just figure it out later, but there had been a long time of
Yeah.
figure it out later. So those kinds of things were really helpful. I also had a developmental editor once I had a first draft that was very, very helpful in like I actually sent her like a list of known issues. I was like, here's the thing, and here are all the problems that I can't figure out how to solve. And she was very helpful in helping me tell the story that I was really committed to tell. Because you end up with sort of blind spots or things that you don't
Yeah.
realize, especially when you've had a story that you've wanted to tell for a long time. You don't know how it's going to show up for other people and what's missing in the way that you're telling it. So
Yeah.
that was also very helpful.
So with your coach, did she do any developmental work on the manuscript while she was coaching, or was she really just about moving you forward and the developmental editor was the one who came in and said, okay, here's how we get the manuscript into its next level of development?
Yeah. So, I mean, the coach that I had, I didn't have for that long. Honestly, I had like a limited budget and I worked with her for like the period that I had. I was on maternity leave. I had like this little chunk of time. And so we I can't remember how long it was, but we had like it was a period of months that we worked
Yeah.
together and like just went over, like met on a regular basis and went through the things that were leaving me really stuck and
Yeah.
got me really solidly started on track to finish the book.
Okay. And then in the things that you learned with the coach, were you able to then kind of hold yourself accountable once she had pointed those things out to you, like when your engagement with her was done?
Yes, and also I think we had an arrangement where I just continued to like text her. I achieved my goals or I didn't, like every week for probably
Yeah,
months and
accountability
months
partner.
afterwards, where I just
Yeah.
kind of said like I did it, and she said yay. Like, and that probably went on for many months after we were officially finished with coaching, and that was very useful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So a few highlights for folks who are catching this. Number one, so writing coaches and developmental editors are not necessarily one and the same thing. You can find a coach that will do some developmental editing. Sometimes though, coaches will just do the focus on like, how are you managing your time? How are you moving forward? How are you being held accountable to your work? And the developmental editor is like your first round of editing when it comes to your manuscript, which is really looking at it as a whole and how it holds together and if your plot is sound and the flow is there and all the big stuff. So I wanted to kind of address those two things. The other thing that I want to highlight for folks who are watching this is, the idea of accountability. If it's not with a coach, like find a really close friend or another writer or, even your spouse, if they're really supportive, like tell somebody what you want to try to achieve that week with your book and then have them help hold you accountable and then celebrate that win with them when you actually achieve the thing. Accountability is so important to writers, especially when we are women who have 1,500 things to run in the household and our personal lives and business lives and whatever it is. And we're constantly deprioritizing our own writing. We need people to help us and, point us to the desk and say, go do it. So I want to know, Evonne, I want to know the origin story to the story. So where did the concept 20 years ago for the Prophetess come from? Did it come in a dream? Did it come in a conversation? Like, what was the stroke of lightning?
Right. So first, let me tell you what is. So the Prophetess is a Heroine'S story. So like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or The Matrix, those are like what we call like hero's journey stories. But this story, instead of it being about a boy or a man, the Prophetess is about a 17-year-old girl named Rachel. And instead of like discovering Hogwarts or questing for a ring or swallowing the red pill, Rachel discovers a secret community of Jewish prophets who call her to her greatness through mystical Jewish wisdom. And I really wanted to write a story. I had this story in mind from the time I was a teenager about a woman who was being like called, spiritually called, for something that seems bigger than her. And I had this kind of thought about what would happen if a young woman had like visions that were spiraling out of control and that she'd have to deal with this higher calling, this gift, while also having to deal with her real life. How would she manage that? How could she integrate all the parts of herself, of who she was, and triumph by becoming like a bigger self that could incorporate all of the different pieces along with the calling that at first felt like impossible? And one of the things I learned along the way is about this archetypal heroine's journey story, which is the 9-stage journey of a heroine in literature, which is a little different from the hero's journey. And one thing I've had a lot of fun with recently is doing programs in which women explore how those 9 stages might apply in their own lives.
That's
And
cool.
I think that like it's sort of a very lesser known kind of model of a story, but it's like the story of the Wizard of Oz or Elsa in Frozen, or like the story of Wonder Woman. And that kind of story of like how a woman becomes her greatest self is a little different from the way a man does in literature. And I think it speaks to like the inner heroine in women.
Mhm.
So like it has like a series of like moments that are really familiar to women's lives. And so I've been really excited to be able to share that and help people make the connection to finding their own power based on these kinds of stories in literature.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more then about these workshops. Let's talk about the journal component, like how like this original book has now kind of branched out, if you will, and turned into other things.
Yeah, so this is the Prophetess for anyone can see. This is what the book looks like, and this is the story itself. And then I just really recently, this past fall, put together this Heroine's journal, which is this is a free printable on my website. So anyone's welcome to come and get it at growintoyourgifts.com.
Beautiful.
It's a Jewish mystical journey of growing into your gifts. And it includes a lot of Jewish wisdom in it. But like, when I was a kid, I was reading like, Siddhartha and the Tao Te Ching. So I'm believing that this kind of wisdom, even though it comes from my tradition, can be relevant for everyone. It starts with your accountability, where you say when you plan to work on the journal and when you intend to complete it, and then it's 12 lessons that walk you through a process of like understanding what you currently know about your gifts, how your gifts relate to heroes that you might already be familiar with, or your role models, how we can use our process of life to discover our greatest purpose and like the deep wisdom, and how mistakes can help us to grow. And then it kind of moves you to the process of like, how do you respond to a calling, how do we overcome barriers, and at the end, so there's a little cutout where you can kind of write down the gifts that you want, the gift you would like to grow into, and how you'd want to bring it into your life.
Okay.
And it's a nice little tool for discovering like what's most important to you, and kind of working through and having a little bit of a different perspective, maybe of how you're growing into your gifts through your life's journey.
Yeah. So how have people been responding to this, kind of new printable freebie? And are they coming to it by knowing about you and the book? Are they finding it on their own? Like, how does that connection kind of work in terms of like a marketing sense?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been doing some workshops around it, and that's a really great way to both let people know about the about this journal and also about the book. And I've also been, sharing about it on social media, especially on Instagram. And especially so the Jewish month of Elul, which was in September, is like a kind of the month before the Jewish New Year, is like traditionally a time of sort of preparing for the coming year. And so it's super useful for that. And I got a lot of
Yeah.
downloads for it around there.
Oh, great. Awesome. So one of the things that I think is interesting about this is not, I mean, not just from I love the idea of the, 9 stages of the heroine's journey, how that's different, and then how it kind of works into this journal. Um, but also just like from a kind of like author business hat, right?
Right.
Like the idea of what else can you do with what you've already kind of set up as either your book or as your platform, right? So this journal fits very much, right, with kind of what you're about and your author persona, your online platform, who you're trying to reach, right? And so a lot of the times when I'm talking to clients who are kind of new to this whole journey, I often say like your book is one piece, but you're the face of it all. And at the end of the journey, yes, you have a book that's a product, but really you have to sell yourself and sell yourself into other opportunities where you can then talk about your book and bring people back to your book. But it's not necessarily that you tell everybody about your book and then you hang out in the back. Like you have to kind of like get in front of it and be the spokesperson, for your brand, and your book is a product, right? So your book is one product, but now you've got this journal. And while the journal is not maybe for sale, it's free, it's essentially an invitation for people to get to work with you in a different way, and then therefore
Yeah.
know about your book and therefore buy your book.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think um, I what you just said, I think, is so important and really like not necessarily natural for authors. I
Yeah.
think that for me, it was a real mindset shift and something that I really had to work towards, like discovering for myself that like my tendency would be to sort of hide behind the book and to be like, here's the book. And then not and then just kind of like, here you can have it and not really and not be willing to show my own face. And over time, I've really come to understand that like who I am and what I have to teach is the bigger contribution in some way. And or at least people are going to see it that way.
Right.
And that I really want to share what I wrote in the book. I really want to share that wisdom, but that people get like a book, is easy to sit on a shelf, but a person talks and you get excited about reading what the person said
Yep.
more than you get excited about like, you might have a lot of books on your shelf. So I did really come to discover, and I think it's been really important in my own personal journey to realize like it's okay for me to show my face, to talk about what's important to me and to try and communicate that in a bigger context. And the book is a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's, you know, it's interesting because like people will buy books, but it doesn't mean that they're going to go home and read your book right away,
It's so
right?
true. Yeah.
Like it could sit there and sit there and sit there, and then all of a sudden you get this new review, and you're like, oh geez, huh? And then if you're fortunate enough to know who posted the review, you'll be like, oh my gosh, that person bought that book a year ago. Like we just don't know when people are going to engage with our book. So it's great that they might have bought it at one moment, but then if they don't read it for months, how do they get to know you? How do they get to know anything else that you're about if you're just waiting for them to read the book and you have no control over when that is? So it is about being out there and being comfortable with promoting yourself and, putting yourself out there repeatedly so that you're always top of mind for those people. So hopefully that book ends up a little bit closer to the nightstand,
Right.
as the next read,
Right.
because everybody buys books with the intention of like being excited that they're going to read it sometime, or but like that might not be next week,
I
right?
mean, and the other part of that is that also once people read the book, what do they do next? And that's like how this Heroine's journal actually came to be, because people who had already read the book were saying like, but how do I bring this into my life? What do I do now? And there's like, how do you keep them engaged after they've read the book so that they want to buy a copy for their friends, so that they want to tell their book club about it, so they want to bring you to a program, like, so continue figuring out how to continue the conversation with the people who actually really liked the book is also part of the marketing conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, your book is evergreen, and it'll be there forever. But at the same time, you are like, it's a one, unless people read books, over and over again, which a lot of us don't have a chance to read a book twice because we've got 500 other books on our list of, ones that we want to read. How do you keep them engaged with you with new material without having to spend another however many months writing another book?
Like 20
Right.
years, right?
Um,
Exactly.
so there's that. So, really great things for people listening to this conversation to kind of hold on to and framing your mind around the marketing piece, which is inevitably going to come when you finally have that final product. But before we get there, right, there's lots of things that go into crafting a book. And, what I love about this conversation, Evonne, is that your book is a novel, it's fiction. And a lot of the people who come onto the show are nonfiction. So we get this rare chance to like talk about things like character development and plot, which can be a little bit different than memoir, although they're probably more closely aligned than like a nonfiction business book and novels. So, how did you go about shaping the characters in your book, the protagonist, the antagonist? Like, what were some of the things that you did in order to make these three-dimensional characters fit onto the page?
Yeah. So in terms of characters, for me, um, I always have to remember that a character is a human being, like a full-fledged human being, not like who exists, like this is gonna sound strange, but who exists outside of just like the scenes that I am writing. Like the character was born and like grew up to this stage and has had all kinds of experiences that brought them to the moment of this book.
Right.
And so when I go through a process of trying to understand characters, I interview them. And so I sit literally, I sit at the computer and I start asking them questions. And I don't ask them questions like, what color are your eyes? I ask them like, what was it like for you when this happened? What was the scariest thing that ever happened to you? What do you want the most? And that gets them talking. And then I write down everything that they say. I just sit there and I just write down everything they say, even if it's completely irrelevant to the story that I'm trying to tell. Because like you have to know them as like, you can't just give like, I think when I was first starting to write, like I would just be like, I'm going to make this character a firefighter and I'm going to make this character a dancer. And, like, but if you don't know like how they got to be that way, then it doesn't feel
Yeah.
authentic to who they really are. Characters act in a certain way in a story because they're like these complex human beings with complex emotions and motivations. And the better you get to know them, the better you know how they're going to act in the particular situation you're writing about. And so one of the things that I have had as like practice is if I get to a point in a story and I have no idea like how a character is going to respond, or I can tell that the way the character is responding is just like basically, a stereotypical way of responding. It's just a cliche. It's not really how they would respond. It's the way, and it's generic. Then I just stop what I'm doing and I like sit and talk to the character for a while. And once I know more about like their motivations or what brought them to this moment, then I always know how they're going to respond because like and then that's what makes the response feel real because it doesn't come from like just what, you know, my a thin knowledge of like what was happening in that moment, but from a much deeper knowledge
Yeah.
of who they are.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's like it would be an easy lift to just go to like our stock characters, like you watch a sitcom. There's like a set of stock characters, right, that are always in the sitcoms. You've got the funny
Right.
one, you've got the really smart one, you've got the quirky one, and when you're writing a novel, right, in order for it to truly feel believable and for you as the reader to get lost in the story, is for you to really have the characters be so believable that you're sucked in and you're not thinking about the fact that you're reading a book. You're thinking about the fact that something happened to this person and you're getting emotionally attached because you want this person to succeed or you want that person to fail, depending on if it's the protagonist or antagonist. Um, and I think that, the really great writers, the really great novelists have done that due diligence to know the backstory of their characters, whether that backstory goes into the book or not isn't the point. The point is how well do you know your character for it to be completely authentic and believable on the page so that the reader has no doubt that this is like a real person that, they're getting attached to.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, once I was really, really far along the way when I finally went and fact checked things. Like, is this really is this really how a dancer acts? What are the real challenges that a person might be facing, especially for some of my less like, more minor characters, but like in order to kind of be authentic. But I'm really a stickler for like the information being accurate. I don't
Yeah.
want to, put something into a story that like a doctor reading it would be like, well, that's not how it would ever happen. But all of that fact checking happened a lot later in terms of developing the characters. The most important thing was just to like emotionally understand who they are.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned like the fact checking and like making things realistic, right? So I think there could be this misperception with new writers that like because it's fiction you get to make everything up. Well, yes, to a point, but at the same time, again, like even though it's fiction, you want it to be so believable that like you don't doubt. Like, and Harry Potter is actually a really great example of this because like on one conscious level that the magical world does not exist. But when you are reading those books, because of the way that the world is enacted or exacted, I should say, you don't doubt the fact that this is real to the experience inside the book, right? You want the same thing in your novels, regardless of what subgenre they are. You want the reader to know 100% that this rings true, right? So when it comes to like having something like a firefighter or a dancer, which is not in the magical world, right? You want to make it so believable and realistic that the reader isn't getting caught up in doubt about the writer's capability. You just want them to read seamlessly without any kind of hiccup. So I
Yeah.
think that the idea of like there is research and there is fact that gets incorporated into a fictional book in order to make the fictional book stand more strongly.
Definitely. I mean, and it's like a huge pet peeve of mine, like when I'm reading a book and then I happen to be an expert on a particular topic and they get it wrong. It just really bothers me. So like I had to like, this is a Jewish story and it's based on like it has like Jewish time. And so like I was like, there's Jewish holidays occur like in a certain cycle. They occur on certain days of the week. They occur like the moon is up in the sky at a certain time, and I actually like went through and picked a year so that I could track the Jewish calendar through the course of that year so that nobody would say like, but this Jewish holiday is supposed to be on a Sunday, but you made it a Tuesday. And like, but then over here, this one was a Saturday. Like or like, why was the moon this form during this Jewish holiday? That's not what the moon looks like at that point. Like it really, those are the kinds of things that I am a
Yeah.
stickler about.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, hey, if you can fact check, why not?
Right.
Like if you can go back in time and remember what happened on a certain day or what the weather might have been doing or what was happening in the news. I mean, why not do that and authenticate the story even further? Google's a beautiful thing, for those
Exactly.
reasons.
For sure. For sure.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk for a couple of minutes on plotting. So,
Yeah.
plotting by itself when you have one main plot can be difficult. When you have multiple plots, because you have multiple characters and they're each on their individual journeys, right? That obviously adds a new complexity to drafting and manuscript development. So, how did you tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely challenging. And like I was saying, like at first I would just write straightforward, like one scene after the next, and I would just like kind of let my imagination take me wherever it was going. But it didn't work because I kept going back to edit and kept changing my mind about things. And the thing is, like I would get myself bogged down by the writing that I had already done. So like you add you add like another 5 pages and then you have another 5 pages you got to edit the next time you change your mind. So I wanted to share the process that I have. I think it was a little complicated, but I thought it might give you an idea of like one particular way that it could be done and, that you could kind of make your own. So once I kind of had a sense of what the story was about, I made a list of all the scenes I had in the story. And I actually like wrote down, and you could do this before you actually wrote the whole story, like in just plotting it out, or if you had like a first draft, you could do this. And what I did was I took every scene and each scene got a 3x5 card. So this is my stack of 3x5 cards. So each scene got a 3x5 card. And of course you can't write an entire scene onto a 3x5 card. So I just had to kind of like write out the thing that happened in that scene, like in just, a few words. And then and I color coded the cards. They're in different colors for what subplot they were supporting. And some scenes, of course, support more than one subplot. And I had like a kind of coding system that had, I can't remember exactly what all the codes were, but like there's basically like 3 different numbers that each scene got. It was like
Okay.
what chapter it's in, what number of the scene in that chapter, and like what segment like what number of the scene it is overall. And so I had this like kind of complex like coding so that I could always know where that scene fit. And then one of the things that I discovered in the process is that some scenes that I had could be combined. Like they were really
Okay.
doing the same purpose, and they could be combined together. And then that way and then I was able to use that and do this whole thing to put the scenes in order and to remove the scenes that were not necessary. And I was looking to limit myself to 100 required scenes. That was my goal. And sometimes, like, there might be a connecting scene that was required in between one of those scenes, but mostly not. Mostly, you want every single one of your scenes to actually be doing the work of the novel and not to have as little as possible that's not like required. Um, and then I put my list of scenes into a color coded spreadsheet. This is the spreadsheet. Hopefully you can see. And for each spreadsheet, for each spreadsheet, for each so each in this spreadsheet, there's all these different columns, and each column is one subplot. And
Okay.
then I was able to put them in order that way and like kind of write down, I could have like all the scenes in order for each subplot, and then I was able to order them overall. And in doing that, I was able to make my full list of scenes that needed to be written. And the so and then what I did after that is that I took the 100 scenes and I broke them into 12 sections, and I wrote the sections out of order. So I made 12, so I would write like, I would do section 7 and then section 3 and section 12 and then section 4. And like, I would just put them completely out of order. And I tried to do like the harder sections and to alternate between the ones that were like harder in that I didn't really know what was going to happen in them, and the easier ones, because that way I could kind of give myself a break every, periodically. And writing these sections out of order was like kind of like a writer's version of writing with your non-dominant hand. Like it helped me to kind of get out of this sort of chronological bogged down feeling and just write whatever was there. And I got myself so confused that I wasn't able to just keep editing or figure out what decisions I had made or anything like that. I just got into this place where I just write the scenes that are in front of you, work on those, and then you'll figure it out in the end. And then after all that was done, like then I had a draft that I could go back and like fix everything all at once. So and once I started that process, I made a commitment to never edit a scene more than once. So I allowed myself to edit every scene one time and then just move on. Once it was edited one time, it was closed until I got to the end. So that's how I was able to get to a complete draft that was like that I could work with and get to my developmental editor.
Oh my gosh, so I love the use of the 3x5 cards. One of the ways that I help people get going on their writing is to like mind dump all their ideas onto post-it notes. And it's similar just in that when you have things down on something kind of like tangible, there's a different relationship between your brain and what you're looking at, but then you also have the ability to move things around and see how things can flow differently. And then when you can categorize things, then you kind of can see like, okay, here's one pattern, here's another pattern, whatever, which is very similar to what you were doing, but with scenes and like plot development. The other thing that I love is that you were like, you had a strategic plan, right? Like you weren't sitting down and pantsing the whole thing, which I always believe is never going to get you a finished manuscript, because without there being like an end in sight or a clear objective or an understanding of what point you're trying to make or what journey your character is on, like how are you ever going to know what to write next or how they connect if you don't have a bigger idea kind of in mind. And I kind of feel like when you have an outline, whether it's a written document or a spreadsheet, it's like your map, it's like getting into the car and you have a loose, vague idea of like where you're trying to head, but like you need a GPS, yes, you might take a detour. Yes, you might accidentally get off the wrong exit and have to find your way back through the back highway or whatever. But like you at least have some sort of, something to steer you in the right direction and make you feel like you've got a better handle on things. The other thing that I love is that because you knew by then how you worked, you were able to be like, okay, I'm going to trick my own mind into getting this done by like, layering, some sections with other sections and not doing it in sequential order so that I'm less likely to edit something because I'll be so confused, I won't know what's happening. That is a person who is completely in tune with the way that they work. So I love that. I love that you were like, all right, I'm going to try something else because I know how I typically have gone about this and it hasn't worked.
Yeah, it's just the writing it chronologically was just it was just killing me because like it was so obvious that so much of what I had done was wrong. And what I like, meaning it was so obvious that what I had already written was going to need to be changed. And what I didn't really understand until having gone through this whole process is that it was all going to need to be changed anyway. Like it was, there was never going to be a point where I edited the beginning parts of the novel to perfection and I wasn't going to have to go back and fix them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I didn't realize that it wasn't a problem, that some of those things were just, going to need to be changed. Some of them were going to need to be cut. And that's just part of the process. It's really okay. Bad first drafts. Like that's really
That's what they're for.
That's where you got to start.
That's what they're for. They should really call them something else, like messy mind dumps, or I don't know, something So, like I think draft still gives people the idea that like there has to be some sort of precision to them.
Right.
Um, and it's far less precise than that. Like, drafting is usually with a pencil so that you can erase it, but people don't often think of that. They get really stuck
Yeah.
on the idea of there needing to be more form there than really what there needs to be at that stage. And I think also people forget that like, it's never one and done. You're
Right.
never going to write a book in one draft and think that it's good enough, or you shouldn't be
Right. Right.
moving it onto the printer, after just one crack at it, because of how much you learn as you go and how many things evolve, and the fact that like the book takes on a life of its own. I mean, I have to imagine that in 20 years of development that your book took on a life of its own and ended up at some point telling you that it wanted to be something else than what you had as an original idea.
Yeah, I mean, and I was just gonna say a word about pantsing. Like you can, but like I think that like I would, it part of the reason that it took me so long was because like the first draft kind of looked like that. And actually when because you remember this was a 20-year process. So my writing coach said, you don't have a complete draft yet. I was like, oh yes, I do. I wrote a first draft. It's 700 pages. It's like in a big binder right there on my desk. Like there is a first draft, right? And so like you can totally write it like based on your imagination and have it be like a sort of, dwelling in your fantasies and like, have a story about a girl who starts when she's 12 and ends when she's 21. Like, this whole sort of journey you can, but like, eventually you're going to need a plan and probably would be more efficient to start with a plan than to do what I did, which was like to write 700 pages and then make a plan. So,
Although then you have lots of material, so there is that. It's a lot to try to figure out what to cut, because 700 pages isn't going to get you there, but
I mean, the whole thing, I mean, it's almost nothing of those 700 pages made it into the final book, really.
oh my gosh, you
But
live
I
and you
mean,
learn
the
though.
process was valuable. I mean, I'm all about, the journey matters too. And I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know that I could have gotten to where I needed to go without having gone through that, but it's not the most efficient way to go about things.
Oh my gosh, Yvonne, this has been wonderful. You have provided so much insight and so many tools and tips and tricks. So let's wrap up here by just letting people know, where should they be connecting with you? Where should they get your book? And then the journal, where would they be finding that?
Yeah, so the Prophetess is available, like I was saying, it's available on Amazon, of course, and also on my website, which is growintoyourgifts.com. You can get signed copies of this book, and I also have a bat mitzvah package if you're looking for a gift for a bat mitzvah girl. So this book is appropriate for adults, but it's also been really loved by teen girls and is appropriate for bat mitzvah girls. It comes with some inspirational stickers
Oh,
and
fun.
some beautiful candles. And here are the beautiful candles.
Oh,
And
nice.
a journal with a matching pen that says "Grow into all your gifts." And so that and a signed copy. I'm happy to write like a personalized note to the recipient. So you can also buy that on my website,
Wonderful.
growintoyourgifts.com. And also on the website, very prominently, you'll be able to see the Heroine'S journal, and that, like I said, is a free download where you can print it out. It's printed on 5 sheets of paper, double-sided, and then print it. If anyone has any trouble printing it, like just be in touch with me. We can work out a way for me to mail it to you. And then so that's how to find me. You can obviously contact me through that website, but I'm really active on social media. I've been building up my Instagram following. So if you're on Instagram, I'm Heroine Whisperer, and I have some really great materials that I'm putting out there that I'd love to have you follow and be in touch there. On Facebook, the book has a page, Prophetess Book, and I also have a group where I share all different kinds of goodies and hopefully share ideas with each other. It's called Growing to All Our Gifts. And I also have a WhatsApp group and an email list if you're interested. So you can contact me for all of that through the website or at evonnewrites@gmail.com.
Wonderful. So we will make sure that we get all of the places and things listed in the notes with this video, with the links, so you have an easy time finding and connecting with Yvonne. I love that you put together a bar mitzvah packet. That's great. What an awesome idea. I wish
It's
I knew somebody who was having their bar mitzvah this year so that I could purchase that for them, because it would be freaking fantastic. What an awesome package. Um, so everybody, you need to just take some lessons out of Evonne Marzouk's writing manual, which is basically what this whole conversation has really been about, is like write with Evonne. That's what I feel like we've gotten out of here, is like, you know, how she went about it and how you can too. So thanks for tuning in and catching this episode of Open Book Broadcast. It's always wonderful to bring you more expertise and fun in your writing and publishing journey. We will see you again soon.
Thanks.